Start sound. Camera.
I want to thank BabuKishan Spotlight, great program for the next generation. And I think it's something that all of us should watch and to take pride in the accomplishments of our community. So thank you to BabuKishan for giving me this opportunity to tell my story. Thank you.
Greetings, all my relatives, those of you who are watching this program today. Those are words in Kwakwala. It's Aboriginal language that belongs to about 5,000 people, but only 50 speakers left. And it says, greetings, all my relatives. Nachtamid. We are one with each other. My name is Chief Bob Joseph. I live in Vancouver, BC right now, but I was born on the mid-coast of British Columbia. And in the last few years, I've been working with Reconciliation Canada as their ambassador. And what we're doing is calling out to all Canadians across this country to recognize that we have a collective history that has been very broken as a result of various colonial initiatives and policies. There was huge harm caused to the Aboriginal community. And one of those initiatives was the Indian Residential School, and that's where I sort of come into the picture. I was taken to an Indian Residential School when I was 6 years old, and I spent 11 years there. It was very, very abusive. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional, spiritual abuse, every conceivable form of abuse existed there from time to time, or from one time to another. And as a result of that, most of us left those institutions completely broken and dysfunctional and angry and resentful and hateful because we had no sense of value. We were so brutalized spiritually that we came out thinking we were absolutely worthless and nobody cared for us. But over time, we've been wrestling with that issue as Aboriginal people, with other Canadians and our government. And in recent years, we've come to some agreements that respond to the legacy of Indian residential schools. And now we're in this moment of great peace and reconciliation that we're trying to create among ourselves, Canadians and Aboriginal people, but all Canadians with each other. So this is really exciting. We think that if we do this right in Canada, the whole world ought to be watching and learn from our experience as Canadians.
Hello, my name is Henry Grayman, and I'm the president of the Lunenburg Sugihara Civil Courage Society. My background is such that I am the child of survivors of the Holocaust, so I'm second generation. I was born in Germany, in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, and that was a gathering place, perhaps a DP camp, where the Americans set up a hospital. My father came out of 9 different concentration camps, and he went to this hospital to regain his health as much as he possibly could. A small Jewish community formed because many survivors came to Garmisch, and my parents met at a dance that the Jewish community put on. In 1951, we emigrated to Canada, as well as about 35,000 other survivors of the Holocaust at that time. We moved to Toronto, and I grew up basically in Toronto. The experience that I had as a second generation child and as an immigrant to Canada was quite different actually than many children who were of the Jewish faith but living in Canada already. My parents didn't particularly feel a connection with the Jewish community because as far as that community was concerned, my parents had come to Canada as a free country. They had a job, they had a place to live. They weren't oppressed in any way, so get on with their life. Well, that's just not the case because my father in particular, my mother as well, were highly traumatized by the experiences that they had during the Second World War. And those experiences, in many different ways, were passed on to me as a second generation child of Holocaust survivor. So it's with that experience in mind, I eventually came out to Vancouver, and I was part of a second generation group where we shared our stories. And my wife Deborah was the coordinator and the facilitator of that group. And it was actually a very healing journey that we all took together as individuals who had grown up in Holocaust survivor families. And there was a lot in common that we had. It was out of that experience as a group, we also had an interaction with survivors and second-generation survivors of residential schools, and we shared stories with them. It was a very moving experience. Then years later, we were instrumental and part of forming the Wallenberg Sugihara Civil Courage Society. That happened in 2013. Prior to that, we had been a part of commemorating Raoul Wallenberg and his great deed during the Second World War in saving about 100,000 Jewish refugees from the Nazis and from certain death in various concentration camps.
My name is Deborah RossGrayman, and I am the child of a Holocaust survivor. My mother was saved by a visa from Chiuni Sugihara, the Japanese diplomat who was serving in Lithuania during World War II. And he exhibited extreme compassion and civil courage when he went against the orders of his government and issued transit visas to Jewish refugees. He basically saved them from certain death in Europe. He gave out 6,000 of these transit visas. My mother, Nechama Ram, was the recipient of such a visa. And she traveled across the Trans-Siberian Railway to Vladivostok, where she took a boat to Japan. She lived in Kobe for 6 months, and just before Pearl Harbor, she was sent to Shanghai, where she survived the Holocaust. I would not be alive today if it was not for the actions of Chiuni Sugihara, and I live every day in gratitude with this deep knowledge. And from this place is where I come to the Wallenberg Sugihara Civil Courage Society. We were formed as a society in 2013 by members of the Swedish and Jewish communities to commemorate the actions of Raoul Wallenberg and Chiuni Sugihara and others like them who stand up against injustice to help others. And in 2016, in January, we honored Chief Dr. Robert Joseph with the 2016 Wallenberg Sugihara Civil Courage Award because he, after suffering severe oppression and at great personal risk to himself, he stood up and spoke out against injustice to help others.